This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library
enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for. I think it's been quite interesting for me personally seeing how FRFR kind of exploded in terms of being like the solution that you needed to have if you were, you know, wanting to get a modeler on stage and have some stage volume again. Now, of course, there's also a bit of a fight to just get rid of any stage volume at all, which is partly why I think people go down the modeling route in the first place. So this is actually like a little bit of a niche where, to some extent, if you are still using an FRFR, then I do think you could be using a real amp anyway. So it's a little bit of an in-between phase where, like, the FRFR is for you or whatever you're using. I'm not sure what necessitated the explosion or whatever of FRFR. This idea really that what guitarists need is either the most flat response speaker or the most, you know, accurate representation, the full 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz flat the whole way, so you get the most accurate response out of your modeler. What I've found personally is that it's actually not what I've found works best. Last week I did a gig using a Bad Cat Black Cat 30, just using the tube effects return. This week what I did was just took the Deluxe Reverb and plugged an output of the FM9 straight into here, and honestly I think accuracy is not what we need as guitarists. So I think part of where this kind of thing came from, so FRFR speakers, PA speakers, I think the idea is that they're more or less the same thing, more or less, but things have changed a little bit, and you get like little niche products that are very specific for guitar, or you get repackaged products that are specific for guitar, or you get things like the Fender Tone Master or Tone X Cab, which to me are the best of this bunch, because they seem to actually understand the problem in a very sensible way. A line 6 in the Power Cab manual kind of shows what I think the whole point of having an FRFR might be. So it kind of shows what the modeling thing is more like. So if you imagine that you're a guitarist, you know, instead of being in a room with an amplifier, you're in a control room with all of the post-processing. Now, the pros that they say to this are that essentially you hear what the audience hears. So if you're just going straight to a PA speaker, there's no, you know, difference between what you might be hearing and what the audience might be hearing. They put that as like a pro. I think that's actually a bit of a con, because if you think about what you want on stage and what you want your guitar to sound like, at the front of house instead, you know, you've got subs, you've got speakers, you've got totally different things. And I think this idea that what you have on stage should be exactly the same as what is going out of front of house is actually not what you need at all either. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Like, the idea that if you had a Vox AC30 or a Deluxe Reverb or whatever, and you stick an SM57 in front of it, what folks are hearing out front of house is not the same as that amp sounds to everyone on stage, or to you on stage as a guitarist. It's the source, and it's a sound of that source mic'd up, as well as whatever the sound guy has done to shape that. In many cases with live sound, you know, they're going to take off a bunch of low end so that you're not competing with the bass. That's actually not what you want as a guitarist on stage. You probably want to have the raw feel of that guitar amp or whatever's going on. So I think, to me, there's a few things that have been introduced, like the idea that an FRFR sounds more like the PA speakers that you're using. Now, again, here's another thing, like PA speakers all sound very different to one another and respond very different to one another, even though they are, you know, purpose-built FRFR type things. If you stick a Mackie next to an RCF, next to a QSC, next to a Yamaha DXR, all of these things are going to sound different. So if you really want your thing, you're that concerned about the audience hearing the same thing, then just get, you know, like 2 Yamaha, whatever you're using for front of house, use one for your guitar. You could legitimately do that, and that would probably be fine, and probably would get you most of the way to what some of this FRFR solution seems to be. Now, the con that line 6 said was like in the situation where you have like some sort of cab on stage or some sort of amp, as well as going to front of house, was that your sound is different on stage to what's going to front of house. I actually think that's a benefit, because it's a more complex tone, and provided you're not having like weird issues like phasing or whatever, then what you're actually going to be getting is like a more robust sound. If you've got some amount of stage volume which is helping out the front of house, I think it's actually, provided you're wanting to hear the guitar, which I think is actually pretty much a lot of sound people seem to not want. It's a more full sound because you've got the sound reverberations of the room and stage and stuff like that, as well as the direct source coming out the front of house. So you get that, you know, like when you've heard a drum kit mic'd up in a venue, it's a bigger, fuller sound. It's not that the snare sounds exactly the same through the PA as it does on the stage. Like, these are, you know, bigger sounds that are capable from having a mic'd up source and the source sound and all that sort of stuff. think when it's most noticeable that a guitarist is not using any stage volume is when they go to take a solo and all you can hear basically will be like drums or bass or stuff like this. I think typically a sound guy is gonna, what they'll do is check your clean level, they'll check your solo level, and they'll try and kind of squash these things down. I think to actually get heard at a solo level, you need a significant boost, because presumably your normal sounds are going to be designed to kind of sit in the mix with like a singer. What I think we should be aiming for, you know, if we want a guitar solo to be heard and also for it not to drop the energy, because this is the thing that you notice, and I don't know if any of you guys have noticed this, that sometimes if the audience can sort of hear the guitar but sort of maybe not for your solo, it's just, they don't give a monkey's. It doesn't matter to them because they can't really hear you. Where if the solo is like on par with where the vocal is, you actually get like a much better response, and people tend to respond to it better. That's what I found, and so that would be my aim. And I was on a gig with Lewis Corbett, who's a guitar teacher and player from Comitro, great player. And what we, in our first set, we kind of figured, like, actually I don't think this audience are necessarily responding to your guitar solo parts the way that I'd expect. And I looked at his patch on Helix, and I was like, you just switch between the clean and dirt for me, get out in front of the house. Now obviously this is not something that necessarily, if you're setting up on the day, you have time to do very well. I think Lewis had set this up at home and then double check with the Tonex cab, but when you're in a actual band scenario, you find that these levels just need tweaking. So generally it's not really even for me about tone live as much as it is about volume. So if you're finding that there's a drop from your clean to like your driven tone, that's not necessarily ideal. I tend to find that your clean, because you're going to strum quite hard and there's going to be way more dynamics. The thing I tend to find live is that my cleans are actually a little bit loud relative to my rhythm tones. And then, you know, say you're playing Teenage Dirtbag, you go from playing that clean part to the drive, and then there's like a little bit of a feeling like it's dropped in volume. So you want to avoid that. And then equally, when it comes to your solo, you want to make it feel like the vocal, the space that was occupying, the solo is now there. That to me is like the ideal sort of balance. And other people will have different feelings on that, but just in terms of my experience, that's what it is. And it's less about tone. And it's same like if your vocal's too quiet, and it, you know, I had it with my wife the other day. I was doing sound, and she was like, "I can't. This vocal just sounds really weak, and like the EQ's off." All I did was kind of just turn the vocal up, and it kind of then occupies the space a little better, and is not fighting with so many frequencies in the same way. And I didn't have to change anything about tone, and she was like, actually that's way better just by having it, you know, volume wise. Volume makes a huge difference to how we perceive tone and all that sort of stuff. Now, with that in mind, what I've found with most FRFR things is, especially if they've got a tweeter involved, that they do not behave or turn up the way that an actual guitar speaker does. And I think this is the thing that a lot of the FRFR thing is kind of missing. A guitar speaker naturally has some roll-off, you know, sort of around 4K-ish. The tweeter is designed to stop that roll off, so you've got more accurate stuff, but I just don't think it's useful, particularly if you're already happy with the tone that you dialed in at home, what I found is normally if you put it into an FRFR speaker, something you dialed in at home, if you take it live and don't make tweaks, it's generally going to be super, super, super spiky. And it's just one of those things. And I had one of these expensive FRFR things that someone sent to me, like twice the price of a Fender FR12. I got some footage of the gig, and I had to go into the EQ on the FM9 and take out so much high end that it was kind of like, well, this is just pointless. And so I don't think that you're looking for the most accurate thing, or even FRFR in general, personally at least. So I would encourage you, if you've already got a guitar amp, maybe you've got a Deluxe Reverb, maybe you've got a Hot Rod DeVille, maybe you've got, I don't know, if you've got a cab, a normal guitar cab, and some sort of amplification system, even a solid state like a Line 6 Catalyst or something like that, I feel like you're getting pretty much close to what the experience would be like with a really good FRFR anyway, so you may not have to buy one. Now, the good news is that they're cheaper in general than an amp if you don't go down the super boutique route, but if you've already got an amp, I'd just say, like, sometimes you might not even be allowed to take your FRFR anyway. It might end up being redundant on some gigs. Likewise, if you can take an FRFR, like if you're on a 2-guitar gig, like last night Lewis was on my Tonex cab, so I had to bring something, so I thought I'll use the Deluxe Reverb because I need to try this. It works absolutely fine. I just don't think that the FRFR need is necessarily as big as you might expect. I don't know, that might just be my own opinion on it that is totally wrong, but I've tried like a bunch of this stuff. You know, I think Fender FR12 and the Tonex cab are good units. And one of the things, again, which to me kind of proves that what you want is not exactly the same as what is going to be going out the front of house. On the Tonex cab, it's got this amp tone thing, which is like you can switch it from being just basically straight flat response, or if you turn it all the way up, kind of boosts the mids and reshapes it to be more like that amp in the room thing. To me, if you've got an FRFR, you're wanting more of that amp in the room type feel. You can get that with an actual amp, and you don't necessarily have to buy an entire new unit. It's kind of what I found. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, your favourite FRFR. I wouldn't necessarily think this was the most reliable solution, Deluxe Reverb, but to me it was better than a far more expensive FRFR solution that I've tried recently, one of the boutique ones, like the Most Accurate or whatever. I feel like it's barking up slightly the wrong tree. Like, I want good, warm, guitar sounding sounds on stage. I don't want well, this is what digital already does, like the harshness to some extent, or like the fizziness. That's exactly what we're trying to get rid of. So for me, FRFR speakers that you can, you know, experiment with taking down the high cut or taking out the tweeter altogether, those to me are the ones that I get on with best. If you're anything like me, then you might find something similar. I don't think we need brighter guitar speakers with our digital modelers, is essentially what I'm saying.